What up, brothers? Back at it. Delsol's here. Aaron's here. We're gonna do some more modifications, well, really some maintenance. So if you guys caught it on the other video, I was talking about we went to that track day at Pocono Raceway. Mine blew the turbo, his blew the rack. What was it? What's going on with the rack now?
Well, at certain points when you're like driving down the road at certain, just really at certain periods, you have play in the steering wheel. You can literally turn it like this without any steering movement at all.
Yeah. And then I remember you talking about like it would get caught and then you can't like return.
At the same point when like you would try to like steer, and it didn't even have the, usually when you turn the steering wheel one direction and you let off of it, it centers itself or self-centering. But mine, when you let off of it, it would just keep you going the same direction wherever you put the steering wheel last. So that's a serious issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, as long as that, when you're going down the road and trying to steer, you would like almost like catch, like you could feel like the tooth was broken or catching, like you'd have to like really like lean into it, like push on it, and then it would like let loose and then let you turn.
And this is a problem that we saw before, that it was definitely catching a little bit when we had it up on the lift just checking it out one time, but it was okay for the time being, so we'll show you a little bit more of what that actually is. We're gonna do the rack in this thing. It is non-powered, so it is a little bit different if you guys have the power rack, so we don't have all the lines and hoses they need to take off of it, which is gonna be a hell of a lot easier. And while we're at it, I'm gonna put this in another video, but at least let you know, we're doing inverted tie rod ends and extended ball joints as well to help with the steering, the bump steer with the lowered car. So we'll split that in a second one, but let's get at it. So if you're getting Detroit axle stuff, just make sure you know, you get the most high quality box money can buy when you get your stuff here. We didn't touch this, by the way. We just unwrapped the front box just like this, and it's just kind of thrown together there. But hey, you know, as long as it's safe in there.
You know what they say, a box is a box.
Yeah, right? But here's the brand new Link steering rack. You think it's rubbing the fender or what?
Wow!
Hot damn, brother.
Wow! That's shiny.
Oh, it's really chewing it.
It's really eating.
That's the outside though. Or that's the inside.
That's the inside, yeah, but like I didn't realize it was rubbing that bad. I'm rubbing here too. Damn, bro.
I wonder where all that noise is coming from. First, obviously bust these off. Got little cotter pins. Best way to get a ball joint out is to, not the ball joint itself, but you whack the knuckle where it's attached to. See how they have like that extra, here, let me get on there. Yeah, do it, man, do it, yeah, get it. And then it pops right out. Oh, it pops right out. So one thing we gotta do is from this shaft, we gotta remove the joint under the dash here. Aileron's over here. And you can see in there kind of hard to see, but that cover, that's covering it there. Gotta pull that off. It's just got little push pins on it. We gotta just use the fork tool, my favorite fork tool. There you go.
So many activities.
So here's that boot we were talking about. So the way it goes on is there's a guide pin that goes over that one, and then that push pin you just pry off with the fork tool or however you can get it off. And then you have two clips, one on the top here that you can grab in there with a screwdriver and pull it down to get it off, like so. And then the bottom one here, that also comes off the same way. It doesn't have that little spot in the back to pry off of it. If you pry off one of the sides and work it around, it'll come right off like that. And then it just spreads in the middle here, and you pull it off around the shaft there. And then we dive down in here. You can see on the steering linkage, there's a bolt on that. Obviously turn the wheel to where,
yeah, I'm gonna have to unlock
once we unlock it,
on the,
yeah, and then you just basically turn it to where you can access it easily. We had just turned it so the bolt is facing us, so it's easy to remove. But one thing, once you remove that and before you remove the shaft, or should I say before you put it back together, because there is no airbag on this one, we don't have to worry about it, but just make sure the steering wheel is straight so that you have the equal amount of turns going to the left as you do to the right. Otherwise, it's gonna be funky and you're not gonna like it, and you're gonna have to reset it, and then you're gonna have to backtrack a lot. It's gonna be a pain in the butt. But one thing to pay attention to, guys, with airbag stuff, if you are taking the steering column out with a car that has airbag, make sure that the steering wheel does not turn at all when you go to take it off and are working on it, because if it spins, the ribbon from the clock spring for the airbag is in there, and if it spins too many times, it'll actually go past where it's supposed to be, and it'll rip that ribbon, and either the airbag won't work or it'll go off in your face, and you don't want that to happen. So just make sure you lock the steering wheel in place if you have an airbag. All right, so the bolt's out. Now you see that opening there on the one side? It's just like some ball joint styles where if you look at it, yeah, it's got that opening there. Best way to make it easier so it slides right out is get a hammer and chisel. Like this, maybe something a little more aggressive depending on how big the spread is. So I'll use this one sometimes too, and just hammer that so it opens that up, and it makes it so it slides right off, so you're not fighting it and trying to pry on it real hard to actually get that out of the shaft, out of the clamp there, of the U-joint. So we'll hammer that real quick, and so then when we break it loose, it should fall out, but we might have to pry on it a little bit. So it's, like I said, without being in power, it's pretty simple with no lines. You got these two bolts holding on the side of the rack here, and then over on the other side, you got one up there and one down here. The hardest part is just being able to wiggle it out because of the shaft being in the way, because you don't have a huge amount of space, but we will show you how it's done when we get there. It just takes a little finagling, that's all. So we forgot to show you what was going on with the rack problem here. So if you look at this side, look how much it's moving up and down, and all around you can hear it clunking. And then if we go to the other side over here, it's not nearly as bad. Ain't nothing going on. I mean, yeah, the ball joint's moving around obviously for the inner, but the rack ain't moving like this one. So yeah, that's why we're replacing it. So we should have taken the outer tire out on off first. So what you should do with this is leave it on the knuckle and break this jam nut loose first. Otherwise you're gonna be fighting it like we are to break it loose. If you do it on the car, then you don't have to worry about doing it this way, which is not a big deal obviously, but it just makes it a little easier. And usually most outer tie rod, or most jam nuts are 7/8. Some of the European stuff does different style, but these ones are 7/8. Pull them off, and then when you pull them off, anytime you're doing an outer tie rod in, count how many turns. Because yeah, you want to get an alignment afterwards, but if you want to get it close so that you can at least drive the thing, count how many turns it comes out so that you can put it back the same and pretty much get it dead on. As long as you're using the same length, you definitely want to measure them and see if they're the same. But other than that, that's right there. In this scenario, a U-joint is your best friend. So you can get up in those hard to reach spots and either use a ratchet or a gun. Obviously we're using a gun in this scenario. But so then you can get in there pretty nice and easily, because that top one up there, you definitely had to get in there, because otherwise it pinned the gun up against the axle and you can't get it out. So that's what we had to do there. So as I was saying with the shaft from the steering rack, it pretty much did just fall out. He whacked it with a hammer pretty hard and opened the joint, and then basically pulled the rack down and kind of tweaked it down in this way to get it out of the firewall there. And now we just got to wiggle it through one side and out the other. Definitely had to take the exhaust, or going to have to. We got the spring bolts off, had to heat them. They were a little locked in there, but a little heat helped it out. So as you can see, we tried turning this down, upside down, but it's hitting the exhaust now to get out. We're gonna try and do it with just removing this part, because they do say both the manifold and the exhaust. Hopefully we don't have to do that. We'll wiggle it out. Definitely had to pull that pipe down off the manifold that goes to the rest of the exhaust. Just makes everything a lot easier. It wasn't hard. The studs look really clean. The nuts were really bad, so I just didn't even try it. We heated them anyway, just because if I even have a question if the exhaust bolt might round or break, I always heat them just so I don't have any issues coming off and going back on. So we're gonna go back at it again and see if we can wiggle this thing back out. May has to also take the linkage off the transmission, but we'll see if we can wiggle it out without it. All right, you know, we're just trying our best not to pull any more stuff apart, but we definitely have to pull this linkage off here for the transmission. The other one, although I'm saying this every time, we should be able to get it out, but this little round clip was around this sleeve here, and it covers the drift pin. So you just get a screwdriver and push that around, and then you got to get your drift pin punch, which the ones we have, and they have little balls on the end here that go inside the drift pin, and then they have a flat spot to actually hammer the drift pin so they don't get dogged up when you do it. So you got to slide that out, and the linkage will come off. So here's what the drift pin looks like. Put it on the ground here. So you see how it has this this break in it here. And so that collapses when you put it into the slot. And then you can see how the ball of the punch actually goes into the hole there. And it's the perfect size and it just slides it right out. So then he's already got it off. So that was the hole that it was in. And it just slides over that shaft in there. And now it's off. Now the rack's gonna come right out, guys. It really is actually gonna come right out. Except for a little bit of the boot here that we're hanging up on. Yep, there it is. Just make sure you swap your boot. Firewall side is the big flat side there. And make sure you clock it correctly. So you look at how this is shaped in there. Like this. Yep. Which makes this like. Yep. This. And it also has a keyway.
Oh, where that big one is on the bottom?
No. Doesn't have. Oh, this little nub. Yeah. Like so. Now we're ready to send it back on in the car. Same way we just took it off. So same thing going back in. Yep. We flip it upside down and slide it in over to the right. And then once you have it in its place, you just kind of loop it up over this and then spin it back up and then it goes right in. Now just make sure before you bolt it in that you have the linkage attached in the car, because otherwise you're going to be fighting with it because you don't have a lot of play with the linkage up in the top there. So you got to get the linkage on before you actually bolt the rack in the car. All right guys, so my job is going to be up here putting this guy in place. So let me find a good spot for this flashlight on. So we got our steering wheel slightly to the right. So I'm going to have to unlock this steering and get it straight. So that when we put it together, it's right where it should be. Let me see if I can get this in a good spot where you guys can see what's going on. All right, Aaron. Give me the good stuff. Oh, easy, hold on. I gotta get the seal. The seal around the, I got it back. All right, hold on, go down a little bit. You're too far. You're too high up. Hold on. There we go. We're in there, dude. Yeah, now that I have it in place, I can spin it. Because I'm gonna have to spin it around so I can actually get the bolt in this side. Aaron, we got to push it in just a little further. Oh, there it is. Hold it, what you got? Cool. All right, so now I got that started, we can go down and lock everything in place on the frame. So we got the drift pin back in, just start it and then hammer it back in. You gotta have the linkage, because if it's forward, the boot covers it up. You can't get to it, so if you pull it back, then you can take the boot out. Thanks, bud. And then hammer that in with the same tool that you got it out with, and then make sure the flat spot, well, it doesn't matter if it's top or bottom, but that bump there will actually sit inside the drift pin, so it keeps it locked down. So you just rip on it. And then spin it. What I did is, you saw me struggling with trying to get this rounded over, so I just grabbed it with pliers, opened it to the big jaws, and then just spun it. And now it's pinned in there like it's supposed to. Then you can cover it back up with the boot. Easiest way is to throw the shifter back where it was, and then pull the boot, which I can't do with two hands. Next is the exhaust. Piece of cake. Up there, in there. Tighten up the bolts. Then we got a new donut we're gonna throw in there. Set it on there first. Lock it down with the spring bolts. You see, yeah, we got nice and lubed up on our isolators here, because otherwise it's a fight to get them in the rubber. So you just slide them right in. Yeah, what did Kaz say?
The deal. Kaz said, you know what Kaz says. You know, buddy boy. Sometimes a bottle of lube can be your best friend. Kaz knows best, dude.
Lubin the deal.
Lubin?
There's some motherfucking news.
Oh.
You're gonna have to come up.
There you go. Thank you. Bingo. Alright, so the only thing other than to do is to tighten up the bolt and the steering linkage under the dash, and then put the boot back on, which is pretty self-explanatory. Wrap it around and then throw the clips back on it. But that wraps up the rack. Pretty simple. Definitely get alignment when you do one, just so you make sure your stuff's straight, because it's never exactly the same. But other than that, stay tuned for the next one. We're gonna be doing the lower ball joints, extended ball joints, and the inverted tie rod ends now, but you'll see that on the next video. Peace out.